Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast, presented by Queen Anne Beer Hall. RJ, I don't know that place really ever calmed down last night. Like, I was just seeing bits and pieces of people from the beer hall last night during that big game. I mean, it was so loud. It was so loud.
Yeah, that place never calms down. It is always rocking during Kraken games. I mean, it's just awesome to be there for the road games. And as much as I'm happy to be in the arena for the home games, like, I feel like I'm kind of missing out on the party there as well. There's always something going on. You get the different crowds. So you get the pregame crowd, then everyone kind of goes to the game, and you get the during game crowd of people who don't have tickets to the game, and then you get the post game crowd of everyone, you know, kind of filing in from after the game, ready to celebrate a big Kraken win last night. So it's just rocking all the time.
Yeah, and you know, with those road games, because there is going to be a road game 5 in this series against Dallas, you never know who's going to show up. It might be Bowie. He might break a window and then flee the scene of the crime. You never know what's going to happen.
That's true. I cannot confirm or deny who broke the window. I didn't see it. Mm-hmm. So Bowie may or may not be innocent.
RJ's on no witness list. I see how it is. Gonna have a fun podcast for this one. Obviously, of course, break down the Dallas series so far. Talk about where we think this series can go. That's going to be a big part of all this. But before that, we've got news and notes. And then even before that, RJ, because today is NHL Draft Lottery Day. You have this tradition, apparently, that I'm just now learning about, or I've forgotten because I just don't care. But you have a Draft Lottery Day tradition that we're going to all take a part of.
Yeah, so I've texted you about this every year that I've done it, so good to know that you care, Dylan.
You know what? If you ever got it right, RJ, I would care.
Fair enough. So disclaimer here, I have never gotten this right. So every year on Draft Lottery Day, what I like to do, because you could run that Tankathon lottery simulator forever and get all the different results and everything. I like to do it just one time, morning of the draft lottery, see who wins. So it's never been correct before, but I'm going to do it again right here live as we record this here. So the timer just went under 7 hours until the draft lottery. Right. Ready for me to hit sim?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So the winner, according to this, of the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, and this would be pretty fun, the Detroit Red Wings.
Oh my gosh. What do you mean that
the
would be
Yzer plan
fun?
Comes to fruition.
What do you mean that would be fun?
He's out of the conference.
That's true.
And he's in a place where I think he could do well.
Yeah, him and Dylan Larkin can just go and, I don't know, Edvinson next year and everything. I don't know. That's a mess.
Jumping up to the second pick is the Chicago Blackhawks. Don't worry about that.
No, I don't like that one either, especially because I think if Fantilli goes there, it's just the second coming of Jonathan Toews. So the only solace I'm taking in any of this, RJ, is the fact that you never get it right.
Yeah, exactly. So we know this is what it's not going to be.
Yep.
But if you want to find out what it is going to be, and you want to find out with us, we have a live stream for the draft lottery for our Terror the Deep patrons. So if you're already a patron, make sure to join us for that at 5 o'clock. Watch the lottery live along with us. See where Connor Bedard ends up going. And if you're not, link to the Patreon down below. You get that, lots of other cool stuff. Looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Yes, definitely. It's been too long between doing a live stream like that and hanging out with everybody. Looking forward to catching up. All right, news and notes, RJ, for the Seattle Kraken. And really for the first one, I know you're all eager because you've been there. They had a practice and everything. I know you're all eager. Just want to mention Coachella Valley first, just because then we can just focus on the Kraken kind of the rest of the time. Coachella Valley is advancing to their division finals. Calder Cup playoff, RJ, we were just talking about this before we hit record. It's kind of a mess. All of these different series of different lengths. But the bottom line is the Coachella Valley Firebirds are in the Elite Eight, if you will, of the Calder Cup finals. They're going to be playing the Calgary Wranglers, who I believe were the only team better than them in the regular season in all of the AHL. So this is going to be a massive series down down there, Calgary and Coachella Valley. But it's still a best of 5 series, RJ, because the AHL just is allergic to games and money, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it's travel. I think they're just trying to minimize that. That's what it is. Of course, between Calgary and Coachella Valley, there's some significant
That's
travel
travel,
there.
yeah.
But one thing that's interesting too with the best of five is the higher seed gets to pick. Do they want the first two games at home or do they want the last three games at
Yes,
home?
I
And I think
love
that's
that.
super interesting. And Calgary chose to have the first two games at home. So Coachella Valley, if it goes five, they'll have the deciding game five at home. They'll have three of the five games at home, but they do have to start out with a couple games on the road.
Yeah, and oh man, this series is going to be so much fun. Coincidence, RJ, that out of the Pacific Division, the two teams left there, and really the two best teams in the AHL this year, both like centered around fire. Maybe other teams should take note of that. Rebrand.
Yep, I think there's something to come on. You don't want just 32 fire branded teams in the AHL, do
Yes,
you?
and then I want the NHL to all be branded around ice, and then it's how great would that be? It would be so easy for incoming new fans then. So yeah, that series is going to be epic. There's no way around it. But good luck to the Firebirds. And I mean they've been doing so well so far through the playoffs. It's been fantastic to see that for the Seattle Kraken organization, RJ, as we then transition to the Kraken part of that organization, which has also been doing so well through the playoffs so far. It's fantastic to see. I don't know. You're the news and notes guy. You can pick where we start on this. There's obviously lots of stuff to talk about when it comes to the Seattle Kraken.
Right. So I think we'll start with some awards talk. Get that out of the way here.
Yep.
And the Kraken had a player and a coach that were finalists for a couple NHL awards. So we'll start with the least surprising for sure. Matty Beniers, Calder Trophy finalist. So he's in the top three there. The way this works really quick, just for those who might not be super familiar, is the votes already happened. So the voting for these awards happened at the end of the regular season. The winners are already decided, but we won't find out who they are until the NHL awards in Nashville in June. But what they do is they release the three finalists. So the people who had the top three, the top three vote getters, they'll let us know now ahead of time. And they're kind of just breaking a new one of those every day as we go through the playoffs here. So the Calder, Matty Beniers in the top three. That's as no-brainer as it gets. He's got to be the favorite to win that award. I mean, Matty for Calder. We've made the shirts.
Yes.
I don't think any of us are surprised. But one that did surprise me a little bit, the Jack Adams Award. So that's Coach of the Year. That's voted on by the Broadcasters Association. So it's not by the PHWA. And Dave Hakstol is a finalist. So he was in the top three vote getters for Coach of the Year. And personally, I think well-deserved. I was just surprised because, I don't know, East Coast bias, other things. I just didn't think he'd get the recognition there.
I did. I thought he could make top three. I still don't think that he has like any chance of winning. Probably.
I'm with you.
Yeah. But I think top three, especially because East Coast bias was there. You look, Boston and New Jersey are the other two. It doesn't get more Northeastern hockey than that. But I think it makes sense. I mean, especially because think of all the broadcasters who, especially when the Kraken were traveling, right? Going into all those different buildings, getting the job done, playing really well, playing like a complete team, 3 lines, 4 lines rolling, all that kind of stuff. I mean, just if you saw a Daniel Sprong goal this season, how are you not going to vote for Dave Hakstol for Coach of the Year? Right?
Fair enough. And I'm sure you probably also heard a little bit from John Forsland about how great the Kraken were doing. You know, I'm sure he's someone that you'd listen to and respect as well. I don't know how much he, made the case to all the other broadcasters, but, they talk. Broadcasters talk.
Yep.
And when John Forsland talks, I think you tend to listen.
I do too. This is the one thing though that I want to talk about with both of them, and then we can also, talk Calder a little bit here. Do you think the NHL needs to rebrand this whole announcing the 3 finalists? Just because the finalist aspect, I've just seen a lot of confusion on Twitter and stuff these last couple days with the idea of these being the finalists, and then people thinking that now, the voting takes place and then it narrows it down to 3 people, and then there's a second round of voting while the playoffs are going, and lots of people asking, is what Matty's doing, is the fact that they're still around for, Seattle's still there, but Boston isn't, is that going to help Hakstol win? When you and I, as you just said, right, we know the voting has already taken place. The NHL already knows the winner. Do you think they need to change the word away from finalists to like the top 3 vote getters were kind of thing? You know what I mean? Just because it is creating confusion for newer fans.
Right. I mean, it may be. Although I think that makes it less interesting and like, oh, the top three. It just feels like, oh, it's already kind of happened. I understand it may be
It has
misleading.
though.
Yeah, that's true. You want to maybe if you're like you want to create that suspense of, oh, the finalists and maybe there's still something. Do you want to be misleading? I don't know. But yeah, maybe there could be some rebranding there because it is a little bit confusing for sure. Because they are regular season awards,
Right.
and that isn't really emphasized in the marketing of any of them really. So yeah, I think maybe it could do for a bit of a rebrand, but I think it's good that you are naming the finalists or naming the
Yeah.
top three. It gets the conversation going again and brings more eyes to it.
Yeah, it gets the conversation away from whatever playoff hockey games just happened. Round 2 playoff hockey games happened, so it's a good way
For
to
regular season awards. Fair enough.
Yeah, it's a really good whole system that the NHL has there for their own PR to eat itself there. I just think finalist is kind of a confusing word. It's like, well, I mean, technically everybody's a finalist. They're all eligible to be voted on, all 32 coaches or whatever. I just think there's probably a better way of saying it that would make it a little more clear for especially newer fans. Calder wise, like you said, Maddie's the probable favorite. I would agree with that. Boy, that's the one though that I sure wish the playoffs counted for at least round 1, RJ, because that would really lock things up for Maddie in this Calder race. But the thing that I was happy with was just seeing all the different like statistical analytical models, all the different people out there that have those were putting out theirs, and Maddie looked really, really good compared to the other finalists there. And that was the one thing that I was maybe worried about was, because he didn't hit like a really lofty point total number for the regular season, maybe people would start looking somewhere else to try to find a reason to vote for an Owen Power or something like that. But it seems like, what? No, everything just lines up. Maddie's just that good, everybody. Sorry.
Yep, he is. And you look at some of the more advanced models too. The point totals aren't, off the charts, but his defensive impact is incredible looking at some of those. And his finishing really impressive as well. So good to see that. I can't imagine him not winning at this point. I'm sorry, I just can't.
No, it would take some fantastical work by the Edmonton media to just try to get Stuart Skinner over him. I think it's not happening. I'm really, really happy about it all. And then I'm really interested to see also where Hakstol finishes, because the bottom line is that team played well. When you're talking about the team that's number 1 in goals, 5v5, top 5 in goals after the year they had last year, he definitely deserves to be in that conversation. So definitely happy for both of them. Good news for the Kraken. What's up next?
All right, up next, and I know people have been waiting for this eagerly, we get to talk about Jared McCann.
Yay.
Because he returned to the ice a couple days ago for the Kraken's practice, and he was in a red jersey, so the red non-contact jersey, so that's kind of the next step coming back. And real quick, just to start stuff, as far as the injury, the team won't say what the injury is, no official confirmation, but watching the play, I think we've talked about this in the past. Like, it looks very much like a concussion. All signs point to concussion. So we're kind of going to speak about it as though that's what it is. So he returned to the ice in a red no-contact jersey, also wearing a tinted visor, which would point to concussion as well. And so I got there early for practice because I was thinking maybe he'd hop on the ice. He did, took 2 laps, then went right back into the room. And I was like, oh, is that it?
Yeah, that's not good.
Right. But then he came back out about 15 minutes later, went over to rink 2, did some work there, and then came back over to rink 1 and actually practiced with the team. So didn't take any contact, obviously. He was in that red no contact jersey, but he kind of ramped up as the practice went on. Started off very slow, maybe 20%, on those first couple laps, but kind of ramped it up. And I think was about near 100% by the end of practice, as far as just kind of game speed, shooting, skating, all that kind of stuff. He stayed out there later to tip some pucks afterward, which I think is a big thing, kind of working on your vision and making sure you can focus on that. His hand-eye looked good. So that was a good sign. Seemed like everything went well, at least by my eye. And confirmation that it seemed to go well the next day. So at morning skate yesterday before the game, he was out there again, not in a red jersey, in a white jersey. So he sheds the no contact jersey. That's another really good step in his progression. And he was out there doing morning skate with the team. He didn't take line rushes. As you all know, he didn't play last night, but it feels like he's working his way back and getting really close.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. Obviously, Jared McCann, big part of this team all season long with the 40-goal campaign and everything. And yeah, it's just fantastic to see him back out there. It sounds like he's doing all right. He's progressing well based on what, Hakstol had been saying. Game 3 was seemingly never an option. And then game 4, I mean, we'll talk about this a little bit later. It sounded like even that they didn't necessarily want to rush him back for it. We'll see if things maybe now have changed. But a game 5 seemed like a likely target date for his return, which would be really, really cool to see him on the road in Dallas, especially given the way that this team plays on the road. Do you think it's odd that they never disclosed even like upper body on him?
No, I mean, look, they got away with not doing it, so
yeah,
why would you?
That's what I was just gonna say. Like, do you think it's weird that the NHL has just like really this year just allowed multiple teams to do that? Like,
no, because I have such low expectations for the NHL. Like
Okay.
that's what it is. I think as the gambling and the sports betting becomes more prevalent, like they can't get away with it forever. But while they can, I think they're determined to get away with as much of it as they can.
That's what I was kind of getting at, was like I at some point they're gonna have to start cracking down on these coaches. You'd think they'd want to, do it softly by just saying, please just stick to upper or lower body. Like,
yep.
Give us
still
something.
Officially undisclosed.
Yep. All right. Good news there for Jared McCann and his potential return. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about where that might take place, RJ. Was that it for news and notes? Should we move on to breaking down this series game by game?
Well, one more thing. Speaking of undisclosed injuries, unfortunately, Daniel Sprong left the last game in the second period with, again, undisclosed. I don't think they've even said injury.
No,
so we don't know for sure, but I think it's probably an injury. So we'll wait to monitor that. We might get an update today or tomorrow on that. But that does play into McCann returning in that conversation that we're going to have.
Yes. I mean, you know what? Let's just have the conversation now. Just for everybody, because everybody's going to be paying attention. This is going to be a big thing that they're going to want to talk about. I'm checking real quick the transaction page on Cap Friendly, because when I went to Hockey Reference just to pull up the team, RJ, Jagger Firkus is listed on the Kraken's roster according to Hockey Reference, and so I'm trying to check to see, did they call him up after last night, because that would be crazy. That would be big news. I don't think so. I'm assuming this is a mistake on Hockey Reference's part.
That can't be right.
Yeah, there's nothing on Cap Friendly about it. I would assume that would have been news all over the place. We would have really, really seen. But I was going to say, well, that would make the conversation around this Daniel Sprong thing a lot more interesting.
Yeah. No, but I don't think Jagger Firkus is getting called up here.
I don't think so either. I think that's just an oddity there. But Daniel Sprong, I mean, look, he had the injury coming into the postseason we knew about. It looked like it was hampering him in that Colorado series. I think that's pretty safe to say. And then, so who knows if this is something new, if it's a re-aggravation of that injury. The question, though, becomes, RJ, if he's not at 100% and maybe McCann's not at 100%, do you roll with one of them at not 100%, or do you look at maybe bringing in a Froden at that point if you're Dave Hakstol?
I think at that point you just look at bringing maybe a Froden. I mean, it's probably no more than one game. I mean, we talked about McCann's potential return. I think game 5 would be the latest for him unless there's some kind of setback. So you can roll with Froden on the fourth line for one game. You probably double shift someone else in there a little bit too. Froden might have 5 or 6 minutes of ice time, and that's just what it is. But I think you're okay for one game. But then if this is more of a longer term thing and you do get McCann back, then we had that whole discussion of like, okay, well, who do you put him in for you? Who do you scratch? The decision might be made for them. Yeah,
exactly. And, probably based on ice time, Sprong would be the obvious person anyway. Just based on how Hakstol's been using the lines and everything, that would make sense. And the way Ty Cartier has been playing, because, and we'll get to this, breaking down the series, Cartier looks fantastic in this series. Like, he is just not slowing down. He hit a little bit of like a welcome to the NHL wall a little bit early on, but he's right back from that. I got to think that Hakstol's liking the physical edge that he brings and the fact that Matty line is starting to get going. So I don't know that McCann would just immediately kind of replace Cartier in the lineup. Everything's back to the way it was beforehand, because I don't know that you'd want to mess with that chemistry right now, RJ.
No, I don't think you do. And I think you're going to be looking at maybe other options somewhere down the lineup. I mean, one thing you could do is maybe move a Morgan Geekie back to the fourth line center and really bolster that fourth line. I mean, that would be very strong. And then move McCann onto that line with Wenberg and Schwartz. That's one thing you could do. I mean, you could move Karche down onto that second line and move McCann back to where he was. But I like that line with Beniers, Eberle, and Karche for the time being. So yeah, I think those are maybe some options, but I think you want to keep Karche up where he is.
I think so too. I agree with that. And I don't know. I kind of like, I mean, Morgan Geekie was like my MVP of the first period for that game 3. So
I know.
It'd be really tough. I don't know if you do something. I don't know. Do you have McCann center the fourth line?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think you want to throw him back in there as a center.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have him play wing on the fourth line and
Yeah.
just really try and take advantage of those plus matchups. I mean, that could help you down the lineup, and maybe that helps you ease him in ice time wise. That might be kind of a first game back solution.
Yeah, especially if, you know, you're targeting game 5, but he needs to step in game 4. That could be like a good middle ground where you could really kind of shelter him ice time wise, but you'll still have him for power plays and stuff like that. You can throw him out there.
That's true. Give him the power play minutes, all that, because I mean, he does help that power play unit that's still struggling a bit.
Yeah, I don't, just a little. We'll get to it. So that's the situation there. The bottom line is we're just not going to really know anything. Tomorrow morning skate would be the first time that I suspect we'll get any sort of inkling as to where this whole situation with both McCann and Sprong could be going. So patience and just keep, you know, paying attention to the Twitter. RJ will let us know when he knows.
Yep, exactly.
All right, so this Dallas Stars series, RJ, it's going pretty well, actually. I was worried. I had a lot of questions about the Seattle Kraken going into this one. You know, questions that didn't really get answered in the first series just because Colorado was so top-loaded that it was kind of hard to tell, like, well, how much of this is because the Kraken are really, like, right there? How much of this is, you know, Colorado's just big guys just being that good versus the Kraken not being able to defend top players? All that stuff. The special teams especially, like, did Colorado just fall off, you know, with their power play, and the PK is still potentially vulnerable, or is the PK actually super legit for the Seattle Kraken now? Game 1 answered a ton of those questions. Game 3 answered all of them. Kraken are just, they're this good. They're legit. The bottom line is they're hanging around with top teams. They're up in the second round, RJ, 2-1 in this series against the team that I picked to win the Stanley Cup. Kraken are good.
Yeah, they are. I think we can confidently say that. And it's something that we knew really going back to January when they were playing really good hockey consistently against top teams. But our big question was, well, okay, after several months of not being at that level, in a couple of months, like, can they get there again? Are they ever going to be that team again this season? And I think certainly game 3 showed and proved that they are. And big evidence for that, 7 different goal scorers, 7-2 win, 7 different goal scorers. And that's the kind of thing that we were seeing in January, that type of scoring depth being all over a team who's really very good, the Dallas Stars. I mean, that reminded me of one of those games in January. And I think we are seeing that team back. And as we knew back then, that team can hang with anybody. If they play their game, they can hang with any other team. No team scares me. So I think that's just really cool to see that we're at this point in the playoffs and that Kraken team is here, and you know, who knows how far they can go.
Right, and they're handling playoff hockey, because that was the other great unknown for this team was, can you handle it when things get more physical and more intense and every shift is, you know, do or die? And if you make a mistake and it's in the back of your net, that's a massive deal, right? That puts you one step closer to the off season and your season being over. And the bottom line is this team just was like, yeah, no, that's fine. We got it. Like yeah. You know, like they've had a couple games that have been rough. Right, game 2 in this series was really bad, but some of that can be chalked up, especially that game, to fatigue factor. The fact that the Kraken were the only team through all of the first round and then into the second round to not have an extra day off between games. It was just every other day. They ended up playing eight games in 15 days. Like, that's, you know, a lot of hockey leading into that. And so I just think, yeah, this team has answered all of the questions. They can be physical. We've seen them win the hits battle every game this postseason, I think.
I think so.
I would have to double check it, but certainly more
doesn't sound
often
like
than not.
like it doesn't sound, easily able to do, but I think they may have every single game.
Yeah, I know it was, it's certainly in this Dallas series, it's been that way. And through a lot of the Colorado series, it was that way. Because I know a lot of people were saying the Kraken needed to be more physical in that Colorado series, but the hits were always in favor of the Kraken. I feel like the Kraken found that extra physical edge in this one, especially that Susie hit on Marchman last night. That was fantastic.
Oh, for sure. That set the tone.
Yeah. This team is figuring it out in all the different ways. Special teams, I mean, the power play needs to be better, but, hey. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Nobody could be perfect. Yeah, this team is just, it's got it rolling, and I mean, I don't know, RJ. I don't know. I know. It's been lots of dancing around that question of how good they can be and how good they are, and I'm just so gun shy to have that conversation.
I am too. I mean, it's the kind of thing I don't think about at all once the game starts. It's just, okay, Kraken versus Stars. What's going on in the individual game? I think you and I, we both lock on to the minutia of the game and try, we get very in the moment there. But at least personally, once the camera stops rolling for post game and I go home and I'm just kind of lying awake in bed because I can't sleep after those games, like, that's what I'm thinking about, is like, how good is this team actually? How far can they go? Because I think both of us are a little bit, I mean, in a way we're not surprised because we know the team was capable of this. We've watched them all year. We've seen them play and win like this. But I think we're both a little bit surprised at just how far it's taken them in reality.
Yeah, the depth, right? Like, we knew they had depth, and we know that that's a valuable thing come playoff time. But if you go back to like the pre-playoff discussion and when we were ranking the teams that I thought were most dangerous, I really thought that teams with star players was going to be a problem for them. And I thought that, especially early on in the playoffs, the depth doesn't matter as much as having that one player that can just go out there and get the job done for you. Right. And I was really worried that the Kraken weren't going to necessarily have the depth to keep up with that. And hey, they did through that Colorado series. Nathan McCann did everything he absolutely could outside of that one goal where he, gave up on it to complain to the ref. He did everything he could to put away this Kraken team, and the Kraken were able to come out of it. Yeah, it took them 7 games. But the bottom line is the Kraken were able to win that series. And then in this one, Dallas, it's not like they don't lack for star power, but outside of Pavs in game 1, which I guess we can transition to talk about, the game by game, this Dallas Stars team has been fairly quiet. Their big guys have been pretty quiet, especially guys like Rupe Hintz, who was leading the playoffs in scoring going into the second round. And is he even playing, RJ?
I know. Hintz and Robertson have really not shown up a whole lot to me in this series. And we can kind of ask the question of, are the Kraken just doing this exceptional job of shutting them down? Or are they, a kind of an important tier down from a Ronson and a McKinnon? And it's just that the Stars have more of those guys, because they have, like, I'd say, maybe 4 of them. With you add Joe Pavelski and, Haskins pretty good too, generating offense. Like, is that the thing? Is it quantity versus quality? Or are they that good and the Kraken are just shutting them down more effectively? But either way, I think that's a good sign for Seattle.
It is, and it's a good sign for Seattle that, yes, you can have 7 different players step up and score a goal in a game for you. You can do that at home. That was the final question I needed answered about the Seattle Kraken team, was can they win enough at home? Obviously they're a wild card team. They're going to have, well, I guess it wouldn't necessarily be that way because there is a lower seeded wild card team in the East, but through the Western Conference playoffs, you're going to be a team that's going to have, to play on the road if you're going to try to win. And this team is, we knew it was capable of that. The question was, can they get it done at home? But 2-2 at home so far in the postseason, RJ. It's not bad. That's no, enough.
It's not bad. And that win was convincing, and it's weird to think about, but that was the Kraken's first regulation win at home over a playoff team since I believe January 1st.
Since January, like you were talking about, it's pretty wild. Like, it makes sense when you say stuff like that. It makes sense why I was so much more nervous then than I am now, RJ.
Right.
Because we hadn't seen it. Because we just hadn't seen it. But now we've seen it. We know it's possible, and we know that the Kraken can do it. We'll get to what, any adjustments that the Kraken may need to make or what we think Dallas might do in just a second. But just to real quickly recap these games. Game 1, RJ, Seattle Kraken 5, Joe Pavelski 4. I know everybody's heard it a million times, but the bottom line is that's what that game was. It was the return of Joe Pavelski. It was the fact that the Kraken, I believe, right, they got up to two goal leads in that one, and Pavelski was able to come back from both of them for his team. Or no, Pavelski kicked things off on that first game. That was later. But the fact of the matter was this is a series that right from the jump, RJ, that first period of Game 1, you see 6 goals scored, and everyone's like, okay, here we go. That's what this is going to be. Okay, all right, let's go for it.
Right. It looked like this kind of offensive explosion that I don't think a whole lot of people anticipated that much that early. But yeah, lots of goal scoring. I mean, Joe Pavelski just absolutely taking over in that one. He's an incredible player. That was an incredible performance to be able to do what he did, and just the narrative too, coming back from injury and playing like that. Some nights, some players just have it, and there's not a whole lot of stopping them. And that was one of those for Joe Pavelski and the Stars. But the Kraken, matched and then surpassed the goal total as a team. I mean, that's kind of how they did it in the first period too. They were forechecking, just the tenacious forecheck, getting those pucks free from the corners. You see it with Jaden Schwartz doing that on his first goal. I mean, that is huge. And winning board battles, like, Tanev wins a board battle. Donato takes that puck out, sends it over to Justin Schultz, who snipes it past Oettinger. I mean, they were putting in the work, and they were getting rewarded for it with those goals. And on top of that, Oettinger didn't look that good in the first period. I mean, he was beat a couple times, just clean blocker side. You wonder, okay, could this be a theme here? Maybe maybe the Kraken have found a way to beat him and where he's not going to look that good. Second period, everything kind of shut down. Third period, he didn't allow another goal. So you're thinking, okay, there, Ottinger's back. And then it goes to overtime. The Kraken seemed kind of tired by the end of that third period, but that overtime intermission, they're able to get their energy back. And Yanni Gourde ends up scoring the winner on kind of a broken play, but it's just the ultimate Yanni Gourde goal, just throwing a puck to the net, and the Kraken prevail there in Game 1.
Again, it's that Yanni Gourde line especially, but really all of the Kraken have really embraced it during this postseason run, which is you play through it. You know what I mean? Like, there's clutching, there's grabbing from Dallas defenders on Yanni Gourde and his line mates on that play, and it doesn't matter because it's playoff hockey. That's not going to get called. Nobody's going to have your back. You got to go out there and you got to play through it. You can either let it get to you, or you can try to keep going and play to the whistle. And Yanni Gourde played to the whistle and got the overtime game winner there. And I think that was an important moment where that effort level was rewarded, RJ. And I feel like that really spread throughout the team. Maybe not for Game 2, which we'll talk about in just a second, but certainly for Game 3, just the ability of this Kraken team. Everybody, they're just going for it. They're trying to play fast. They're trying to go through things. And I think the strategy changed up a little bit after this first game. After, look, that first period was crazy. I think both coaches kind of throw that out. Period 2 was just a slog for everybody involved. And then period 3, you get those Pavelski goals. And I think the Kraken kind of looked at what their game plan was in this game and said, I don't know that this is necessarily the best strategy for the rest of this series, where, you look at the stats in this one, Kraken outshot the Stars 44-35. It was just all out blitz on both sides, just shots everywhere. The hits, though, 47 hits for the Kraken, 19 for the Stars. And I think the Kraken said, okay, we know we need to be heavy on the forecheck. We know that that's going to be the way that we win games, is we need to dictate play in their zone. That's what we need to do to try to be successful. But maybe we don't need to try to hit everything that moves all the time. Instead, if we just focus on certain key hits and certain key moments, make those really matter, and then focus on the puck a little bit more than just the body, maybe we can get things going. And I think that was an adjustment they made from this one to Game 3. Game 2, however, would normally be where you would see adjustments like that take place. But RJ, Game 2, fatigue just catch up to the Kraken. It's sure what it looks like now.
I know, that's what we had a hunch that was the case after watching Game 2. And it's hard to know for sure because the Stars are a very good team. You could make the argument, look, they just kind of turned it on and they figured out their game. They made adjustments and they just looked a lot better than the Kraken. You look at the expected goal spread. I believe it was the biggest negative total for the Kraken all season. The Stars the first period was kind of even, but through the final 40 minutes, the Stars just absolutely poured it on. The Kraken had no business being in that game. They weren't after a while once the dam finally broke on Philip Grubauer. And Yeah, it felt like fatigue might have been the factor for it though.
Mm-hmm.
But after watching game 3, I think those questions were answered. Like, it really looks like fatigue now, especially with how they're able to come out in game 3 after a day off. But you look back to game 2, and I think the big hint with it too is the ice time. You look at the players' ice time, and it was very evenly distributed. It did not look like a play. It looked like kind of a meaningless regular season game almost, where your top guys really don't have a whole lot more ice time than the guys further down the lineup. I think Dave Hakstol knew that's where his team was at. They were just so tired. You couldn't load up Adam Larson for his usual 26, 27 playoff minutes. He finishes with 22. You couldn't load up your forwards with 23, 24 playoff minutes. They're down at 17, 18. He knew his team was tired. You could tell talking after the game too. He's like, yeah, I think these days off are going to be really well timed. And especially talking after the players after game 3 too. Matty Beniers was saying like, yeah, for me personally, it was huge getting that day off because it is just so tough. It is a grind. I think we really needed that. So game 2, they were just out of gas and the Stars took advantage.
And that's interesting too, especially coming from Matty, given that the Matty Beniers line in this one was the only line capable of kind of doing anything for the Kraken. You look, there's a whole lot of, plus minuses and a great stat, but a whole lot of minuses everywhere else. A couple pluses there for the Matty Beniers line. And you look at the 2 goals, Ty Cartier and Jordan Eberle in this one. And you know what? Score being 4-2, given how bad the Kraken played in that, like if you watch that game, you know how bad the Kraken were. It's pretty good. Like, it showed that this team really, even when they're out of gas, even when everything's not going their way, even when they're only winning 31% of the faceoffs, RJ, team can hang around, and they're still going to put a couple in. They're not going to let Oettinger get a shutout and get any sort of, momentum moving forward in the series or anything like that. And so I did think that was a big deal for the Kraken. It just continued that never say die attitude that they've had since week 1 of the season that I've been talking about. I really, really appreciate that from them. And then also Philip Grubauer. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, there you go. You beat me to it. I was going to say, a lot of that is on Philip Grubauer. When you're able to hang in games, it's because your goaltending is good. I'll let you take it away and say what you were going to say. Yeah,
I was just going to say, Philip Grubauer in this one, for the first time all postseason, started to look shaky in that game too. Especially that, wraparound one where he just lost track of where he was positionally, which for a guy like Philip Grubauer is very unusual. He's usually, that's what makes him an effective goaltender, is that positioning he has. So the extra day off certainly helped get Grubauer right, but even when he looked shaky, RJ, he still was a big factor in this game, not looking as ugly as it otherwise could have. And I think that, again, talking about answering questions, Philip Grubauer answering questions for a lot of people with his play continuing post just playing his former team in the Avs in this series.
Right. It was a slight step down from game 2, but you look at the whole rest of his playoff run, and he has just been consistently solid, consistently sharp. You saw it even at the end of the first period in game 2, where the Stars were really pouring on the pressure, and he made the timely saves needed to make to go into that first intermission scoreless. And the rest of the team wasn't really able to support him after that, but still, he did his part to give his team a chance to win the game. It's just how tired they were. They were not winning that night, no matter what happened. But Grubauer, he's just been really good, really solid every single game. And I think what that does for a team's confidence, knowing that if you put in the work, if you play hard, if you play the right way, your goalie's going to take care of you down on the other end. And I think we're seeing the results of that, in all these series. And it can be frustrating for opponents as well.
Oh, it definitely can be. Philip Grubauer, good on him. And then, you look at the next game, game 3. Obviously all Kraken on the score sheet. We could talk about that in a second, but Philip Grubauer, he had to make big saves in this one. Like, there was times where Dallas was trying to rally, and there was times where they were breaking through what the Kraken were trying to do offensively on the forecheck. They were breaking through what the Kraken were trying to set up in the neutral zone, and they were getting past the defense too. But Philip Grubauer was that last line of defense. He kept the Kraken in it, and more importantly, he kept Dallas from feeling like they had any sort of mojo. They had no confidence. They just couldn't get anything going. And that was a really, really big thing. The fact that Philip Grubauer was able to bounce back from that shakier game 2 and be that stone wall back there, RJ, for the Kraken.
It's easy to forget when the score was kind of as lopsided as it ended up being. But the Stars had lots of chances to get back in that game, to regain their footing and to try and build on something. And Philip Grubauer just stifled every one of those. And Matty Beniers even mentioned it after the game, too, on the point of it's difficult to kind of keep your foot on the gas when you're up, 4-1, 5-1 in a game like that. The momentum is kind of, not the momentum, but, the natural score effects, all that, it's kind of going against you. You want to defend, right? But seeing those saves from Philip Grubauer kind of helped motivate the guys to, go out there, try and get some more goals for him and keep your foot on the gas where he's not having to handle a ton of workload as the Stars are just pouring it on, trying to get back into the game.
Right. And, the Kraken in this one, it felt like those adjustments that they might be looking to make after game one really took effect in this one. Lower event is basically the best way I could describe it. The hit total comes down for the Kraken down to 29. Neither team has more than 26 shots, 26 for the Stars, 25 for the Kraken. Felt like this is how the Kraken kind of want to play this series, RJ, which is just, we're going to try to play it as much in their zone as possible with the forecheck, but we're going to focus on just controlling the puck and just making sure that things don't happen, because if that's a good way of battling a top-ended team like this Dallas Stars team, RJ, where they have 40 goal scorers. They have a couple of them. They've got a bunch of 30-goal guys in their career, whereas with the Kraken, it's just, hey, at any given time, one of our guys will be able to seize an opportunity, recognize a mistake from the Dallas Stars, and be able to put the puck in the net. So we just need to play the game waiting for those chances to strike. And Dallas, as they got more and more frustrated, there was just more and more of those opportunities last night to capitalize.
Yeah, they kept popping up, and I think the scoreline for this one is a little bit deceptive just because of how bad Dallas's goaltending was, and we'll talk about Oettinger later. But I do think this was more of a 4-2 type game if you have average goaltending or whatever, where the Kraken take care of business. And I think that's more the blueprint of what they want, where they're more preventing chances against and just spending lots of time in the offensive zone. After game one, I thought, this is great. Good on the Kraken. They were able to win this way. I don't think you're winning any more games in this series 5-4. That's just not what you want. If it's a 5-4 game, I feel like Dallas is probably winning that going forward. And so they were able to create more of a low event game and be more in control than they were, in game one. And I think you look at the expected goals for this one, and I think that's more telling of the story, where you just take out the goaltending factor. About 2.5 for the Kraken, about 1.8 for the Stars. So, I mean, you're looking at even a potentially lower scoring game than that if the giant gap of goaltending, is closed a bit there. But I think that's ultimately how the Kraken do want to play. And I think that's what they're going to go for, going into the next game and beyond.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about that goaltending. You talked about it earlier. Jake Oettinger, Kraken were able to chase him after 2 periods in this one, allowed 5 goals on 17 shots. He hasn't really looked right this entire series, RJ. Like, even in the game 2, the fact that the Kraken were able to get those 2 goals, it was a big deal. I talked about it on their end. It was a big deal also, like I said, you're not letting Oettinger get comfortable. You weren't letting him build any momentum after, a semi-rough game 1. And things just, all the wheels fell off in this game 3 for him. Just completely.
Yes, absolutely. I think he was saved I think about 3 goals less than expected in his 2 periods on the ice. And yeah, I mean, the first period is scoreless, and he did look a little bit more confident, in kind of his positioning and everything. The second period, it all just fell apart. That first goal, I mean, tough one off of Heiskanen's face there, and Eberle outweights him. But I think the goal that really kind of broke him was the Carson Soucy goal, where he's able to kind of walk in, still not all that close, but he beats Oettinger 5-hole on a shot that's really not all that fast. Most NHL goalies, most of the time, stop that shot. They get down faster and they stop it. And for whatever reason, Oettinger was just really slow to get into butterfly there. And you kind of, if you look at his face afterwards, he's thinking, how did I let that one in? And it kind of got to him a little bit. And then less than 2 minutes later, you have the Matty Beniers goal from distance, from downtown, top of the circle, sends in a shot that may have been tipped right at the point of release, but still, you can probably track that. Most goalies can, and he just kind of whiffs on it. And at that point, you look at his body language, he just kind of droops his shoulders, and you can tell that he knows he doesn't have it for that night. And at that point, I'm surprised they didn't just pull him at that point, because it was clear to everybody that it was not Jake Oettinger's game. And then he does allow another one late in the period where he basically just blocker pushes the puck right to Eli Tolvanen, who buries it.
Yeah.
It was a rough night for him, and so they kind of put him out of his misery there, put Scott Wedgwood in for the third. But Jake Oettinger just looked downright bad.
No, you talked about that Carson Soucy goal. Forget about his face after. Look at his face while Soucy's walking in on him. Again, this is mano-a-mano. You're going up against a defenseman not known for scoring either in Carson Soucy.
First ever playoff goal.
First ever playoff goal for him. Look at him. He's out of it. He's frozen. You can literally tell he's frozen. He doesn't know what to be thinking or what to expect there. And the other thing is, there are times where his eyes aren't even on the puck. He's like kind of looking up and around. And that's when I was like, okay, I saw the slow-mo replay of that one and I was like, Oettinger really doesn't have this. Talked about it before the series. The only way to get past him is to try to confuse him. Don't ever give him the same look twice. Try to get in his head just by putting him in a situation where he can't anticipate something, right? When you're dealing with a good goaltender, a goaltender who has rock solid positioning the way he does, but also somebody who's really good at lateral quickness. If you give him the anticipation that the puck's going to be moving cross zone, he's going to be able to get over there and get it. Kraken have done such a good job that even when it was just Carson Soucy walking in on him and he's like 5 feet away from him, he still doesn't even know to be expecting a shot in that situation. And Soucy's able to tuck it in under his pads. That's incredible. Like what the Kraken were able to do to this guy. And I'm sorry, Otter. I'm sorry. Like it's a rough spot to be in. You're a professional athlete. This is happening to you in front of millions of people, all that stuff. But the bottom line is that what the Kraken were able to do against Jake Oettinger, especially in this game, kind of have it all coalesce into this one. It's remarkable. Because nobody else has really been able to do that to this guy in the postseason ever before, and the Kraken
in his whole career. And you look at statistically, this is the worst game, regular season or playoffs, of Jake Ottinger's career. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen by accident. That takes work from everybody on the team. And when you're on the ice as a 5-man unit too, you look at the Soucy goal. You've got Ryan Donato taking away 2 stars in front of the net and still having his stick there, presenting it as an option to pass, where maybe Ottinger's kind of second guessing, looking over his shoulder a little bit. Okay, is that centering pass coming in here? Because Soucy's not really a shooter usually. And so maybe that makes him second guess. But without Ryan Donato putting in the work there, Oettinger should be able to square up and get on that shot a little bit faster. And it just takes everybody. Yeah,
it does. I was going to say, to Otter's defense, his defense has looked really bad in this one, too. Like, the Kraken have done a good job of attacking the D, especially in this third game. You look at guys like Ryan Suter, RJ. He looks so good in that Minnesota series. He looks lost in this one. You know what I mean? Like, he does. Yeah, he's just not there. There's a lot of guys like that on this Dallas Stars blue line that just Hakanpää's frustrated. We talked about that in the series preview. He's the guy that's their physical edge on D. He was going to be their Josh Manson. If you could frustrate him, he'll take penalties. He's looking frustrated. Harley looks frustrated. Lundell doesn't look like himself at all. Like this Dallas Stars blue line, which again, we talked about, get pucks net front, make them play below the blue line, get them turned around. That is the key to beating this blue line. Talked about that in the regular season games against Dallas. After that game 1, we talked about this. If you can force them to not be able to play the way they want to, they get lost really quick. They start turning into statues. They just kind of park up somewhere and stand there. They lose their physical edge, all of that stuff. And the Kraken learned that in the regular season. You're able to take that third game against them, and they've continued that into this series. And so, Oettinger, yes, he's definitely out of it, but also this D for the Dallas Stars is looking really, really bad, and I don't really see how they're supposed to figure this out, especially if Miro Heiskanen is going to be missing time.
Well, that's the key. I mean, the Stars D, I think they're looking a lot shallower than we maybe thought they were. It looked like potentially deep D-core, but they were exposed as soon as Miro Heiskanen missed time in that game. And so he got hit in the face on a Ty Karche shot right before the first Kraken goal. He left the game, didn't come back. And the Stars D, they look like a completely different team without him. It shows how important he is. And we knew he was important. I mean, we highlighted him in the series preview as someone to watch out for. He's been playing almost 30 minutes a night. He's playing pretty much half the game. And without him, the Stars blue line looks completely lost. He is very, very important for them. I think they will get him back next game. I mean, just kind of reading between the lines on what Pete DeBoer said, that he wanted to come back. He would have liked to come back, but the score did play a factor in him not returning to the game. I don't blame them for not wanting to potentially risk injury there. But you wonder if, I don't know, it's tough when you've got an injury to the face. We don't know what it is exactly, but to kind of play through that can throw you off your focus. Maybe he's going to have to wear a bubble. Maybe he's going to have to wear a cage. Who knows? He might not be himself. And I really think Miro Heiskanen, he is the most important player for Dallas in this series. I think he's the one they can least afford to lose or not be at 100%, even more than Robertson, even more than Hintz. I think he's just that important.
Yeah, even more than Pavelski?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I just wanted to hear you say it.
I know. You're trying to bait me. I gotcha.
But it's true because you look at, not only the effect in the defensive zone where the Stars looked lost without him, the power play. They had, I believe, 2 power play chances after he left. And that's the worst that Dallas Stars power play has looked. They just look completely lost. Nobody knew where anybody was going. Heiskanen really is the guy on the back end of that power play who's able to set people up. You talk about all the Pavelski tips. Those shots have to come from somewhere, right? If Heiskanen's not taking them from the point, where do they come from? Or all the goals where Robertson's able to get some time and space, walk in and score on the power play. Comes from Heiskanen being able to draw some defenders over with him and then slide him over a pass. That ability was lost on the power play as well. Just all the things that they want to do. Jamie Benn net front even was affected by the Heiskanen loss. So if he's going to not be at 100% for the next game, it hurts Dallas in so many ways beyond just the fact that your number one blue liner isn't going to be able to help out in the back end. It affects the whole team and what they're able to do offensively as well. So it's going to be really interesting, RJ, how Dallas moves forward from here. I mean, we talked about it a little bit last night. Do you move Pavelski back up to the top line, see if that can help get Hintz and Robertson going? Try to achieve something. I mean, that's kind of the only lineup move I think you can make, but I think it's one you have to at least try because now, RJ, all of the pressure is on Dallas. Seattle took care of things in game 3, which was huge for them. You won 1 at home. Worst case scenario, you split at home. It turns into a best of 3 with 2 road games. Just like round 1, that's what happened with the Kraken. We know how that ended up for the Kraken. They were able to win those 2 road games. You're able to win the series. But now, if you're Dallas, RJ, you can't, that's not a great situation, and that's still like the best case scenario for you. Because if you drop game 4, I mean, Seattle has a chance to just win it on 5 on the road where they like to win games anyway. I mean, Dallas, they have to figure something out. The problem is I'm looking at it. I don't know what you can do.
Right. I mean, you can move Pavelski up to that line and just stack things and hope to get a spark. Colorado kind of did that, putting McKinnon and Rantanen together and just seeing what they can create. It opens up holes and weaknesses further down the lineup, and that's where the Kraken can beat you as well. It's a tough trade-off. I think at the end of the day, you've just got to hope and pray that your goalie is okay, that Jake Oettinger can find his form again. I don't think there's anything you can do if he stays this bad. So a lot of that is just kind of relying on the goaltending, the voodoo that is goaltending, to get back to where it needs to be. I mean, you mentioned to me before recording this too, that like a lot of your ideas are just like, okay, what can Dallas try to do to fix this? Rather than what the Kraken can do, because the Kraken are just playing the same game that they've played all playoffs. So they're just going to continue to do that. They've done that every game except game 2 where they just happen to be really tired. But they're just going to continue to do their own thing. That's what Hakstol always talks about too. He doesn't worry about the other teams, just kind of focus on playing their game. And as much of a cliche as it is, it really does ring true in this case.
Yeah.
But I think you hit on something, though. Dallas is playing a must-win game in Game 4. They have to win it. I think if they drop that one, there's very little to no chance that they actually win the series. And so they're playing with all the pressure. And the theme for the Kraken this year has been kind of house money in the playoffs, right? It's in the best sense of just happy to be here. But it means that, there's no pressure on you. And the Stars, they've got their sights set on a cup. This is their window. And so far, if this playoffs as a whole has taught us anything, it's that the teams with no pressure tend to do pretty well. Look over at the Eastern Conference at Florida. I mean, they've had no pressure on them the whole time, certainly compared to the 2 teams they played against, Boston and Toronto, and they're doing really well. So, heck, give me the team with no pressure on them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. If I'm Dallas, because I have like a couple ideas on what Dallas could maybe try to do, and I don't know how successful this would be anyway, because the bottom line is, I think, yes, you're right. Oettinger needs to figure it out, needs to come back to being Jake Oettinger, but also Dallas blue line needs to play well in front of him too, because he's not going to be able to figure it out if he's just getting shelled, or if he's, got to deal with a bunch of tricky plays in front of him and all that stuff. Guys are there and available for rebounds, all that stuff. He's not going to be able to figure it out. So the blue line just needs to play better, period. And I think the best way to do that is I would talk to all of my centers. I'd have them come back way far in the zone. We know Dallas usually likes to send a winger back, play along the half boards and stuff. No, enough of that. Bring the centers all the way back, have them help out net front, have them help out in the low slot, free up one of your defensemen to be able to go behind the boards, because you're getting killed by this Kraken forecheck with what they're able to do below the goal line, right? They're winning every puck battle back there. And I can't help but wonder if part of that is because every Dallas defender knows the moment they dip below there, that's an empty spot net front. And so if you can have the centers come back, take away that doubt in the Dallas players' mind so they can feel like they can 100% commit below the goal line. I think that's something that I would do. And then, figure out the transition game from there. You know what I mean? Like, the bottom line is you're getting killed because you don't have possession of the puck in your own zone. That's the answer that you need to have first before you can even deal with trying to counterattack. So if I'm Pete DeBoer, I try to figure out something like that. I go ahead and I make the Pavelski change just because you have to. The bottom line is you're losing the depth battle anyway. I don't know that it's going to matter. This Matty Beniers line is eating you alive right now, so anything you can do to stop them, I think, is big too. Jordan Eberle, we haven't even talked about him, RJ. Goal in all 3 games. He's looked incredible in this one. Jordan Eberle's like a completely different player. Love the leadership he's been bringing. Love what he's been able to do, and now Matty's waking up. Was my my series X factor for the Kraken in this one, RJ. If you're Dallas, I think that's the only kind of strategy change that I can think of is you need to find a way to not have the Kraken dictate things in your own zone, and that will also hopefully then fix what the blue line and Jake Oettinger especially are going through, just if they're not having to think about and play in panic mode, basically, because the Kraken are just being able to do whatever they want. And the only way I can think to even try that is just to drop the centers. I don't know, but the fact that that's the best I can think of, it shows what a tough spot the Kraken have put Pete DeBoer in.
Yeah, they're so hard to game plan against. And we're seeing this. We're different teams. And I think it works out well in the playoffs, too, where if you kind of dismiss an opponent, you get a new opponent that maybe has to learn these lessons all over again. I think if the Stars could just kind of import the institutional memory that the Avalanche had from that first series, they might have been off to a better start just knowing exactly what they're dealing with. But these are lessons that Peter DeBoer has to learn and apply kind of on the fly in this series. And I think they're kind of struggling with it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We talked a little bit before recording this about just joking around about DeBoer and kind of, looking a little bit out of it and whatnot this series. And I did point out this is, has nothing to do with actual strategy or anything.
Good story though.
But it's a good story. So I wanted to tell it. I wanted to bring it up. But in game 3, there was a face-off kind of on the offside face-off dot that just went directly into the bench out of play. Almost took out Peter DeBoer. It looked like it just barely missed some players in the coaching staff. But DeBoer went and found the puck, so it ended up on the bench. He goes and finds the puck, and he was picking out a specific fan to give it to. He was directing traffic. He'd be like, no, there's this little girl up there. No, make sure it goes to her. I'm going to toss it. Go to her. And he was directing traffic for 15 seconds. The puck was in play still at this point. They'd already dropped the puck for the next faceoff, and then he goes and tosses the puck himself. You don't usually see that very often. Usually they'll give it to a trainer or whatever who will, make sure the puck gets into a fan's hands. But I thought that was interesting from him. Kind of a cool story and, classy there from DeBoer also to make sure that puck gets into the crowd and to that little girl.
Yeah, no, it's a good story, and I like that from him. I think that's all important, but also this is a round 2 playoff game. And yeah, you talk about not seeing that. You don't really see that in the regular season, much less in the playoffs too. And so it's an interesting one for him. I threw around the idea maybe he's just trying to break the curse, RJ. That first year curse he has of he joins a team, he takes them to the Stanley Cup final, and they lose. Maybe he needs to just not get to the Stanley Cup final with Dallas, and hopefully the Kraken are the benefit of that.
There you go. It's a bold strategy, Dylan. We'll see if it pays off for him.
It's the way we got to play it. Only one other thing I could think of for the Dallas Stars, RJ, and that's to copy the Kraken's game plan. Just try to dictate things in the Kraken zone. Have your forecheck go, cycle the puck. Don't worry about trying to get shots off right away. I know that's a little different than how Dallas usually plays, but when I look at the box score from last night, RJ, I look and, I said it already, Kraken coming back down to earth, only 29 hits in this one. But you look at the forwards, all but one forward, and that being Daniel Sprong, who got hurt and left halfway through, had a hit for the Seattle Kraken in that game, and then 2 defensemen didn't, which I think is kind of funny. Borgen and Schultz. There you go.
Will Borgen didn't have a hit. That's a surprise.
Yeah, right. But he just because he was focused on offense, because he kept getting open to the offensive zone, taking shots, moving the puck. He didn't need to worry about playing physical. Whereas you contrast that with the Dallas Stars, and you look, and it's about half of their forwards had hits. So if I'm Dallas, I'd also try just basically ripping off what the Kraken are doing. Especially if you keep Pavelski on the third line, you try to be a 3-line team like the Kraken. Just rip it off. Just try to get the forecheck going. Again, they're hits. They're not big hits. You're not taking yourself out of the play to make a hit, but you're keeping the puck in the Kraken zone. See if you can then frustrate the Kraken. I don't know that they'll be able to do it. Kraken are too good at doing it. They're just never going to have the puck, RJ. That's what the Kraken have decided.
Right. I mean, it's not in the Stars' DNA. And I think even if you want to start doing that, you want to kind of create more offensive zone possession time rather than firing as many shots as you can. That all starts out in the D zone and just getting exits out of your own zone, and what you talked about of maybe needing to bring the centers back and just breaking the puck out of there and stopping the Kraken forecheck. It usually starts in your own end. And they just need to clean that up first and foremost, I think.
Yep, definitely. And then it's great too, because the Kraken are just evolving with stretch passes, RJ. We didn't even talk about those. Like, there's so much good things that the Kraken have going for them right now. They're just looking so solid. Game 4, mentioned it already, RJ. It's a no-pressure game for the Kraken. I think it's a big deal if they win it. I think that, I won't say it, but we all know kind of what the series starts looking like in a situation like that. I'm not 100% certain that the Kraken can do it, but I don't know that I'm 50-50 anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling optimistic, and just knowing that they could have an effort like they did in Game 3 at home, I just feel like I haven't seen that in months.
Yes.
And so it was really reassuring to see that. I'm going to be excited going into Game 4, and I mean, pressure's all on Dallas. Like, it's the Kraken's chance to just take a stranglehold on the series, and I think it sounds weird, but I think they can afford to lose Game 4. You don't want to. You obviously want to go out there and win and take control, but it's nice to have that in your back pocket where you can lose Game 4, and I think you're in a fine spot. We talked about this on the post games early, where split in Dallas, if you split in Seattle and you go best of 3 with 2 of those on the road, I think you're still feeling pretty good. I do
too, especially now that you look this good at home. A Game 6 situation is also right there in play for you. We'll close it out with this question, RJ. Let's say Dallas comes out and they've got some, they figured something out, and it's all Dallas in the first period. Okay. And Dallas is they're forechecking, they're getting shots, they're beating, they've got a couple goals, let's say. What do you want to see the Kraken do? Do you want to see them stick with this game plan in a situation like that? Or do you want to see them kind of adjust away from it? Because the bottom line is, throughout this postseason, they've been successful kind of sticking with the same thing. I know we just talked about Game 4 isn't that big a deal if you lose, but just moving forward in this series, do you want to see the Kraken kind of become a team that really sticks to their game plan no matter what is happening, game to game and period to period? Or do you think that they're going to continue to need to be a team that slowly, evolves or changes things? I mean, they've done the little things that you need to do to tweak, but do you think we'll ever see a wholesale, like, big change from this group? Or do you think they would need to?
I don't think they would need to. I think that you have the way that you play generally, and just the depth being your strength, rolling those lines and just trying to get in there on the forecheck and being disruptive. I think you make little tweaks around that, like the stretch passes in Game 3, where you see a vulnerability there and how the Stars can defend, and you try and do something a little different to take advantage of it. But overall, I think you kind of keep your game as what it is, because you look at the times that the Kraken in the playoffs have not looked good, the times that they've lost. a lot of it has been getting away from that, as when they've gotten away from how they play and when they make uncharacteristic mistakes. Yeah. When they, will make dumb plays with the puck in the D zone, where they'll be undisciplined. We didn't even talk about that from game 2, where you'll just take stupid penalties that you don't need to take, where you get away from things like that and you end up beating yourself. And I think it just takes that focus, and it's a lot easier said than done to maintain that focus over a full 60 minutes and over a full up to 7 games in a playoff series. But if you can just stay focused on playing that way, whatever adjustments the Stars make, I think overall over the course of the series, you're going to be fine. Just be flexible on those little things that you see. But I have a lot of faith in the coaching staff that they're going to be able to find that balance. There's a reason they're the coaches and we're not. They're able to find those things and choose kind of when to make those tweaks and when not to, but they've given us a lot of reason to be confident. I
agree. And so have the players. Everybody's playing well. Certainly, you're going to say that after a 7-2 victory in the previous game, but it is definitely true with the Seattle Kraken team. Cannot wait for game 4 tomorrow. Can't wait to see all the patrons tonight for that draft lottery stream for sure, and can't wait to see more great pics and videos of everybody losing their minds watching the Kraken at Queen Anne Beer Hall for game 4 as well. Looking forward to that one. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this podcast. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons: Absurdly Sane, Alex, Andrew, Anonymous, Ben, Burnt Creme, Kaylin, Chris, Cody, Connor, Coop, Daryl, DJ Singletone, Duthin, Eli, Elizabeth, Evan, Abak, Gaby, Gary, Gregory, Jay, Jane, Jeremy, Jessica, Joni, Joshua, Keegan, Kepler, Kitty B. Kraken,
Leanne, Light, Lonnie, Mark, Maya, Michelle, Noah, Nunya, Paige, Paul, Rebecca, Sarah, Scott, C.A. Kraken, Sean B., Sean O., Sergey, Shoeshine, Skeletal Tendency, Steve, Steven, Striatic, Pasty Kobold, Team YMIAT, Tank Commander Ty, Wendy, Strife, and Zane.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.